Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. Patriots Against CPS Corruption invites you to attend our March for Texas Children. DFPS has failed the families of Texas. The Texas Special Committee on DFPS has also failed to hear the parents and the children. Time to make our voices heard and surround yourself with those on the same mission as you. Join us on the March for Our Children, September 21st, 2022, starting at 1 p.m. at 701 West 51st Street, Austin, Texas, 78751. I have a brand new guest on. Her name is Penny L.A. Shepard. She has worked in the entertainment industry since she was a child. She was trained as an actress, a singer, and writer. She was tortured by her deep state family of Hitlers, Mengeles, Speers, in the program of MKULTRA, and sex trafficked to the elite throughout the country and in Hollywood. In March of 2016, she left her handler husband, who was a retired CABAL PD officer, Freemason, and deep state CIA, working with her brother and the cabal. She began researching and breaking the MK Ultra that her handlers held her under for 58 years. She was declared enemy of the state under James Clapper and made homeless, arrested, and thrown into a crazy house for 1 year. Her brother David was murdered in 2007 by order of the cabal after writing an unpublished book entitled The Whistleblower About Bush, the Vatican, and My Evil Family. She speaks on behalf of her brother David and all targeted individuals of MK Ultra enslaved. And today, she assists other MK Ultras and targeted individuals in their research and helps them to understand what MK Ultra is. She informs them of the realities of the advanced technologies created by DARPA and other government factions. This weaponry is utilized by a covert faction of the New World Order and is very real. She informs them that the illegal torture of civilians and psyops are real. She proffers how she was unerased herself and broke MK Ultra. She takes calls from all over the world and encourages people to research their own lives and write the truth. She is currently an independent investigative journalist and whistleblower on MK Ultra, sex trafficking, CIA, Black Ops, and SRA and Satanic Hollywood. She also co-hosts with Dave Zublik on Rumble Mondays through Fridays, 9 a.m. through 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. I welcome you to my podcast. Penny, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yes, it's a new volunteering position in which David had asked me if I wanted to executive produce the Dark Outpost and then be a co-host. So I'm helping to get guests, and then we do a daily news and we talk about everything from UFOs, aliens, to the deep state, to the current, to World War III, to the current Russia, Ukraine issue, to presidential candidates, to CPS, to corrupt factions within the DOJ, the DIA, the FBI, which we're, seeing that in the raid on Mar-a-Lago. So we pretty much cover just about, anything. We talk to authors, we talk to MK Ultras, we talk to people that have been disenfranchised by CPS and had their children stolen from them. So it's a wide myriad of topics that we cover.
Mm-hmm. When did you, realize this MK Ultra was in your life?
Well, when I left my husband, I had very prolific handlers. So they were availed of who I was before I was given to them. I did not find out. I just turned 64 August 11th. I did not find out until I left my husband and I was 58 years of age. I was born in 1958. So that seemed appropriate that I did this
Mm-hmm.
Rip Van Winkle for 58 years. And then when I started researching, when I left my husband, he told me I'd be arrested, I'd be thrown in a crazy house, and I'd be made homeless. And all those things, in fact, happened, which at one point drove me back to my very first boyfriend, fiance, who was a handler, who I assessed that he is actually an illegitimate son of Albert Speer, Hitler's minister of war.
Oh, that's fascinating. I don't, a lot of people don't know what this MK Ultra does. And I mean, it destroyed your life, would you say?
Well, it's a controlling faction. It's a currency of the New World Order.
Mhm.
So, I was asked on this one show, and this gentleman said, "Oh, well, you don't talk anything about DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder, and you basically, you have a different definition of MK Ultra." I said, "Well, is that bad?" Because it's not the selective things which we hear the super soldiers are speaking on, which super soldiers are genetically enhanced individuals, either psychically or physically. They are endowed with credible amounts of they can do many other things, many things. It's not just, hey, I just do this one thing. They do many things, and they do them all equally well. So my definition is more broad-based, because it's a global operation of the New World Order. It's very currency. Hitler used it, utilizing NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming language, which is the most potent form of hypnosis that exists. Now, the things that God made for good, Satan will use for evil. So anything that neurolinguistic programming could be used for good, although I can't actually see how, because in my life it was used for destruction, and that's what they use it for. So my broad-based definition of MK Ultra, it basically means mind control with a K, right? Ultra mind
Mhm.
control, and ultra top secret is and there's another definition for it, which is it's an algorithm. It's an anagram. It's not an anagram. I always get this word wrong. It's when you take the first letter of each word. So it's manufactured killers utilizing lethal tradecraft requiring assassinations. But its broad-based scope definition is to control the minds of the populace. This includes the Mockingbird media, the MSN. This includes any propaganda that you'll get from religion. It includes books. It includes Tell Lie Vision. It includes any of those propositions that involve manipulation of a strategized story and strategized narrative, which they want you to believe. So they'll tilt it in the favor of the New World Order to make sure that you're not availed of advanced technology or any other subjects like that. So it's broad-based scope. MK Ultra is mind controlling through the use of the media, through the use of books, through the use of theatrical productions, through religion, through science, through medicine. They're all on the same plane, and they have MK Ultra agents in each specialty that I mentioned and more, not limited to or inclusive of.
Now, I know you mentioned the Vatican, and the Vatican has had its issues throughout the years. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice.
That's okay.
Um, how about, how is the Vatican associated with this?
The Vatican, I refer to as it is the mob. So it's like you thought you were out of the Catholic religion because I was indoctrinated within the Catholic religion, but
Mhm.
they keep bringing you back. You're actually not out. It is controlled essentially. It is the world mob. Okay,
Mhm.
its auspices are Rome, and it actually its foundation was through the Lateran treatises. February 11th, 1929, it became basically sovereign. The Vatican did. And so, I'm sorry, give me 1 second, because freedom's knocking at the door.
Okay.
It wasn't freedom, it was Scooby Doo.
Oh,
It's Scooby Doo, where are you? He's now on the couch, safely ensconced. Um,
oh,
so the Vatican is instrumental And it was controlling all churches, which the churches were established essentially to control the populace. And they utilize MKUltra also utilizes everything. They utilize code words. They utilize the Bible to code people and to use them. I have a chapter that I've written on some of the satanic Freemason pastors, which you would be surprised to know that they exist. It's chapter 10. I wrote it in November of 2019 on my blog, which I have about 36 chapters. And my blog is my name, Shepard, SHEPARD, and the word entertainment dot blog, BLOG spot.com. And so you can go there and just, read some of the stuff that I've written. And this is just in furtherance of your own research. But for me and for all MK Ultras, my suggestion is that you continue to do research and you write hand to the paper and then do a blog if you can, because your research will facilitate the regaining of memories, which you don't know that you're missing a memory until you retrieve it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, do you have any missing time? Well, no, I pretty much, had a good childhood or I had a crappy childhood. And then you start realizing, oh, no, it wasn't just a crappy childhood. It was really
Mm-hmm.
bad. And, you're thinking, hey, I was just handed over to foster homes or whatever, when in reality, the foster system is actually facilitating sex trafficking and satanic ritual abuse. And they're handing over children to bad parents and taking them away from good parents. Not saying that this is always the case, but it seems that the children are now being bartered their currency and they're being sex trafficked through CPS and also to the presidents of the United States, to congressmen, to CEOs of corporations. It is human slavery is a currency in throughout the world, not just the United States.
Most definitely. In fact, a while back, probably I think in the 80s, there was a book called Michelle Remembers, and it was about satanic ritual abuse. And it was a controversial book, but she mentioned in there that there were other children that they were using in this.
Yes, it's global. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people call me from all over the world and they talk about what has happened to them through the CPS system and through foster care system where they were drugged. That's called chemical restraint. If you're older,
Mm-hmm.
I was chemically restrained. So, there's a law against that. But
Mm-hmm.
in regards to children, they use them for a cash machine. So the medical facilities get money to house the children, and then the doctors get money to drug the children, and then they get money from the drug companies, and it's just a never ending cycle where we looked at the medical community and said, hey, they're healers, but in fact what I found out through my research is they're not healers. They're just money making machines, and they're propagandists, and they're destroying people's lives by drugging them, and ultimately they end up committing suicide
Mm-hmm.
or through the drugs, because they're being drugged to death, literally.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, I mean, throughout foster care and even guardianships, this is just becoming overrun. It's as if the legal field has just gone awry.
Yes, we were discussing earlier, I worked in the legal arena for over 40 years. So I had my own legal business at one time when they had floppy disks.
Oh, yeah.
The kids are like, when I say, hey, I didn't have a phone, they're like, what? How old
Mhm.
are you, Penny? You know, they when they were establishing personal computers, they didn't have personal computers, they had dedicated word processors. So I worked for a company which created some of those dedicated word processors, and then I bought one of their dedicated word processors, and I went out to law offices and I offered my services to them for typing up and formatting their legal documents and then returning them to them formatted so that they could present them. This is before you had e-filing in
Mhm.
court, so they could present it. And then I continued on that road. And then I also let myself out and was employed by some very large international law firms. One of them, as we discussed, was Luce Ford Hamilton and Scripps, who Britney Spears' father employed Luce Ford Hamilton Scripps in Los Angeles to establish this guardianship on her. And I work for Luce Ford Hamilton and Scripps in San Diego, but they have many, many offices all over the world. That's what an international firm is. So
Mm.
I work for, very for attorneys that were for property, for insurance, reinsurance, for one attorney that I work for helped write NAFTA, and was friends with the presidents of Mexico. One was Vicente Fox that I remember when I worked there. So these are very high profile, organizations, and they have global ramifications. What are these attorneys actually doing? There are good attorneys again, and there are bad attorneys, and you know that's what we're facing right now. We're facing who in the legal system is actually ready to stand up against the legal system, because they're going to gang up against you. They're going to disbar you if you start disclosing some cabalist sex trafficking things. It's a very difficult road to stand up and to speak the truth, because truth tellers are inevitably whistleblowers, are inevitably framed, thrown in crazy houses. They're disavowed. They're kicked out of the workforce, so they're unable to work. They're also disabled, and that's all part of the disavowing. And in Megan Walsh's case, I knew all these things that were going to happen to her. I knew they were going to happen because it's literally in the CIA playbook, in which they divest you of any means of fighting them back, any financial means of fighting them back. She was, at one point, basically incumbent and relying upon the promises of her family to help employ her. So she was planning on working with them for the remainder of her life. But she is a very intelligent individual. She's a recording artist. She had her own clothing line, and every endeavor that she had, the parents withdrew their financial support because she wasn't being compliant to what they desired. She even created a position for herself at, I'm not sure if it was at NECMEC or with the shows that he was on. And then it was circumvented, she said, by her brother Callahan, who actually took the position that she created for herself.
Mhm. And that whole case there is a very evil CPS nightmare.
It is, especially when the people in your family are they know the presidents from since Reagan. He's very, very friendly with all the Bush family. He knows President Biden. He's known him for almost 30 years. Knows Obama, knows heads of CIA, heads of DIA, heads of DOJ, Mossad probably, knows MI6, Scotland Yard,
Mm.
all the sheriffs in the states, and police. Everyone knows who he is. And then, of course, he's very well known in Vero, which he's lived there for since his son's head was found there. He moved there. So that would be 1982 or thereabouts, in which
Mhm.
he moved there. So, he promoted the past Sheriff Flowers, who had arrested Megan at one point, doing videos with him saying, hey, he's our guy. So you have this component, and then factions within the legal system, that are judges that appear to be tainted, and everyone appears to be commingled with one another.
Mhm.
So, how are you going to get a fair trial when everyone's actually standing on the side of your father?
Mhm. You know, it's all a bunch of collusion, conflict of interest, and that's, I think, what a lot of these attorneys fall back on is their connections.
Yes. And it's also Kabbalistic connections, Freemason connections, their handshakes or signs, these things,
Mhm.
the whatever that thing, a triangle or whatever.
Mhm.
And there was a picture with DeSantis with all the police chiefs. Flowers was right there. There was a man standing next to DeSantis doing a sign, and another man looking back at him like, really? You're going to do that here at a press conference?
Yeah, it's just, how did these people, do you think, fall into this MK Ultra and get sucked into it? Is it like a cult?
You don't get sucked into it. You get born into it.
Mhm.
It is generational. So it's not like, it's not like I was born and said, hey, I got sucked into MK Ultra. I was actually born into it. And in my situation, I think Project Genesis Subproject Eve was about cloning projects. And from my research, now this may change if I find out something, more, but there was a gentleman who was a Surgeon General of Japan. His name was Hirito Ishii, and he did Joseph Mengele like experiments. He was also biowarfare, chemical warfare. And so when World War II ended in September, when Japan signed the treatise, I think Prince Philip was there also.
Mhm.
They surrendered, and then Hirito Ishii, who killed perhaps they say allegedly 50,000 people, doing these experiments and holding them in POW camps, which people were disappeared. So you're never going to see them again. He disappeared. And then in 47, I believe, he showed up at Fort Detrick doing experiments. And it's my assertion that Joseph Mengele was working with him. They're working not just on bioweaponry, but they were also working on cloning individuals. He returned back to Japan the day after Madonna's birthday. So I was born August 11th, 1958, and Madonna, which I think is an evil twin of mine, was born August 16th, 1958. So August 17th, he shows back up in Japan. He's been missing for a while. And then he died the following year. Allegedly, he dies.
Mhm.
So my theory is that he was helping, and we thanked him for all of his work in biowarfare. My theory is that he was working covertly with the CIA, as was Joseph Mengele, and they were creating um, cloned entities in which they can take the ovum of a female and then, or they can even actually just take the DNA of Hitler and
Mhm.
create a clone from the DNA. And they just give it a electric shock. And then they start the growing process, and then they implant it into a woman. So if they're doing these experiments all over the world in covert regions, which I believe that's basically what the war was, because we funded Hitler, and the
Mhm.
Rothschilds, Rockefellers funded Hitler's experimentation, and Hitler was just one. Joseph Mengele was just one of many, many prolific scientists that were working for the Reich throughout the world. But he was noted to be the angel of death because he was direct on the lines, photographed at Auschwitz. But he was giving his experiments to von Schur, who was his mentor. Now, after the war, nothing happened to von Schur. Mengele allegedly goes on the run, protected by the Vatican, who is giving him false names and other passports. And then von Schur goes back to collegiate teaching and just says, wasn't me, nothing, I didn't do anything. And then he's still getting all of the results of the experiments from all of the scientists throughout the world. And then I don't know what von Schur is doing with it. Is he giving it to the Rockefellers or to all of his handlers? Because their ultimate goal was the propagation of the Third Reich into the Fourth Reich, and then the creation of a super uber soldier that would live on to perpetuity, live on internally. If they take the mind, the conscious of the mind, and they copy it, they mind map it, and they copy it, then they load it up to a supercomputer. They can download it into a clone, and then thereby your consciousness lives forever. If you watch The Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it explains a lot about it. They call it like a SIM card, which is in there. It's recording all of your thoughts. And then when you get killed, they upload the most current SIM card into the new cloned body, which is just hanging there waiting to be grown and activated like a sea monkey.
Mhm. It's almost as if some films in Hollywood have led breadcrumbs to these issues.
Yes, that's one of the things that I speak on is the military industrial entertainment complex, which works in conjunction with the military industrial complex. There are many complexes. Uh, Kevin Shipp had spoken on that, and I wrote a chapter about that. Mike Smith did a movie called Out of Shadows, and I spoke with him once, and I was still not in a good place. I was still pretty angry about all the things that had happened to me, but he then interviewed Liz Crokin and Kevin Shipp, who was counterterrorism, who is now a whistleblower on the CIA because they turned against him, which that was an inevitability. But he's a patriot, so he didn't
Mhm.
expect that. So he speaks on what the difference is between the secret government and the mechanism of the deep state. And so I used his work and then, copied some of his PowerPoint slides, just some pictures, and I wrote a chapter on that on my blog. So it's an explanation. So, if you're thinking that's just one or two people that are talking about this, it is not. It's people that were employed for the NSA, were employed for the DIA, were employed for the CIA, and they're now speaking out, and they're telling you that advanced technology exists. Kevin Shipp said that the technology is so unbelievable that you would not be able to understand it. So if he's telling you that, you know, please pay heed and then do more research. Somebody asked me about Stargates, are they real? And I said, yes, they are real. And he's talking about, space travel, and he's an engineer, and he's very concrete, and his thinking very linear and logistical. And I said, well, contact Kevin Shipp, because he's in the same business as you, and he's availed that, if there's advanced technology, it will supersede any of the pre conditions that you're basing your analysis on. So I tell people, believe that anything that is possible. Your research will get much further, and then sift the BS from and the propaganda, and do the weight yourself, the weights and measurement yourself, because no one should be doing this for you. And
Mhm.
if you have the skills to do this research, then weigh out everyone's research. I say, don't believe anything I say. Please do your own research, because these are my assertions predicated upon my years of research.
Mhm. Now, this deep state, you know, how did this evolve?
I believe the deep state has always been around. It's always, the Vatican is deep state. So if you
Mhm.
go back to Roman times, Jesus was a whistleblower, right?
Mhm. Right.
and
Yeah.
and the deep state did not like him. So what happens to whistleblowers? They get killed,
Mhm.
right? So, you're talking about a mechanism that's always existed, that is separated. Even the Bible was actually not given to the populace. It was used as a control tool. It always has been used to mind control the populace. So, Luther, I believe it was, translated it into German, because the peasants did not read or write. So when you're talking to them in Latin, they're like, okay, they
Mhm.
have no idea. You could be spelling them, saying things three times backwards, spelling them, saying, I'm going to kill your mother. I'm going to kill your mother. Say it again. I'm going to kill your mother. And they have no idea what you're saying, because it's in Latin, and they don't read or write. So they're just, yes. And then they confess their sins to a priest, and then that priest is going to use all that stuff. It's kind of like the deep state right now in the FBI. They use and the entertainment industry, in which they use pornography, they use sex trafficking, they use it's called sexpionage, honeypotting
Mhm.
in regards to sex, and they use this against anybody, any political opponent. They videotape them doing copiously evil things with whatever their sexual preferences or dalliances. This has been going on, forever. Well, scribes were writing down what you said when you were, in confession. So
Mhm.
the deep state has existed for as long as man has been on the earth, and so is man being enslaved by those in charge. That's existed since the beginning of man.
Mhm. When the book 1984 came out, isn't this like also tied in to this new world order?
Um, I'm not acquainted with that.
Um,
1984. You'll have to refresh my memory.
oh, it was a
I,
book.
I,
It was it was a book we had to read in high school. Um, George Orwell.
oh, right. Okay. Yes. Um, that was a long time ago. I do not remember it, to
Yeah,
tell you the truth. I
I
remember, I
barely.
know George Orwell, but I don't
Mm,
remember. And now that sounds familiar, but I don't remember the premise of it. Can you
I th-
elaborate on it?
I hope I can. It's been so long for me, but the big brother is watching you,
Yes.
and
Let me read a little bit from one of my chapters. It's chapter 22, Secret Government Deep State. Here's what Wiki defines as a deep state in the United States. The deep state is a conspiracy theory, right? Or are we dealing with theories or actually conspiracy facts? Because when you start tying together all of the threads and the webs of these theories, there was a meme going on that said, you know what? I need new conspiracy theories because all my old ones came true.
Mhm.
The deep state is a conspiracy theory which suggests collusion and cronyism exists within the U.S. political system and constitutes a hidden government within legitimately elected government. So let's go back to Caesar, who was, killed in the Ides of March. Okay, right? That actually didn't exist back then.
Mm.
Every day you will find refutation in all forms of truth, such as the mockingbird media, which exists. Such refutation is put forth by the same secret government which will attempt to hide the truth from you for eternity. Wiki defines an actual fact of the deep state as a conspiracy theory. The term conspiracy theory was created by the secret government deep state factions who wish to discredit any legitimate attempt at unveiling the truth. This is a CIA term utilized when referring to actual conspiratorial facts of collusion of global factions. Author Mike Lofgren believes that there is a hybrid association of elements of government and parts of top-level finance and industry that is effectively able to govern the United States without reference to the consent of the governed as expressed through the formal political process, or consider the deep state to encompass corruption prevalent among career politicians and civil servants. The term was originally coined to refer to a relatively invisible state apparatus in Turkey, composed of high-level elements within the intelligence services, military, security, judiciary, and organized crime, and similar alleged networks in other countries, including Egypt, Ukraine, Spain, Colombia, Italy, Israel, and many others. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the court factions and the corruption of CPS, the DOJ, the DIA, and the CIA. Both Jessup's book, The State, Past, Present, Future, offers three constructs. He cites Mike Lofgren's deep state definition above. He refers to a dark state, networks of officials, private firms, media outlooks, think tanks, foundations, NGOs, interest groups, and other forces that attend to the needs of the capital, not of everyday life, while concealed from the public gaze, or as Jason Lindsay notes, hidden in plain sight. Jessup additionally cites there's a fourth branch of the U.S. government wherein he cites Tom Engelhardt, in that he states it is consisting of an ever more unchecked and unaccountable center working behind a veil of secrecy.
Mhm.
The deep state exists. March 2018, Senator Paul Rand stated there is absolutely a deep state because the deep state is the intelligence communities that do not have oversight. And commenting on the CIA director briefing, where only 8 senators in the U.S. Senate were briefed rather than all of the Senate, he stated the very definition of deep state is when the very people, congressional leaders, and people who are elected by the people are not allowed to hear the intelligence. John Lay, an author who published an article in Moyers and Company, asserted a more broadly based global implication to which the deep state actually applies. John asserts the term deep state has been used for decades abroad to describe any network of entrenched government officials who function independently from elected politicians and work towards their own ends. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about Kabbalistic. So if you don't believe that that network exists, I'm going to tell you to do some more reading to try and find out who these people are and how in their alliances through Freemasonry, through satanic rituals, through a satanic network, which is actually undercover for religious organizations
Mhm.
that work to mind control, that work to tell you, if God knew me when I was knit in my mother's womb. Why? And I've been talking to him all my life. Why would I listen to what a pastor has to tell me as to what he believes that God is telling me? Were you in the womb with me, with my mom? No, you weren't. So, but at some point we look at the pastors, then we start looking at the musicians and the actors and the newscasters and all those people that are in the mainstream forefront, and we idolize them and we give them homage and we start worshiping them and we buy their music and their movies, and we believe that they are the characters that they're playing when in fact they're not. They are not the characters that they're playing. They're not the heroes that they're playing, and they're working behind the scene. We have politicians, which Thorn is an organization which was created by Ashton Kutcher and his then wife, and I looked up the definition of there's in the Omen.
Mhm.
The person's name is Damien Thorn. He's the
Mhm.
Antichrist. So I'm looking at some of the things that Ashton Kutcher has developed. He's also developed some prolific software that is being used, which he said could be used advantageously for sex trafficking. But then again, look at what the converse of that is. Like It was Hank Asher who worked with John Walsh, who invented a program called the Matrix. But Hank Asher was a cocaine cowboy who
Mhm.
was never prosecuted. They said, oh, yes, he was working on our side. Not actually. I believe that he was actually working with the covert factions, which were sex trafficking, drug trafficking, creating straw corporations, offshore banking in the Bahamas and the out islands in which John Walsh worked. And John Walsh also worked for the Paradise Hotel and Casino, at which the Shah of Iran was shuffled there through Intertel, which was their security forces established by covert factions, retired FBI, Secret Service, etc. So, we're talking about not just a good old boys network. We're talking about presidents,
Mhm.
vice presidents, which are involved in sex trafficking. And we're finding out more and more people come to me and say, yes, I was, Nixon abused me, that the Bushes abused them, involved in satanic ceremonies. Stu Webb had said some things that he brought forth about that there was one gentleman who was asked to have Bush Sr. sign a documentation. He went to this place. It was probably an underground dump or whatever. He said he was presented the door. They were all in black robes. And he said, I need to know that this is you because I need to verify the signature. And he said that there was a baby on the table that was being sacrificed and they're giving homage to something. So if you don't
Mhm.
believe in Satan, or the Satans, I refer to the Satans as Draco reptilians and Greys, which are factions which do reside on our planet. If you want to go to that, I say if you really believe that we're the only sentient beings in the galaxies and in the universes, that's a problem. Jim Mars had said, for every grain of sand that's on this planet, there are other galaxies, there are other universes with sentient beings. So how can you actually comprehensively believe that that's ignorant, that
Mhm.
you're the only sentient being in the universe? That's difficult.
Well, I know there was a movie called The Fourth Kind, and it was true story, based on people disappearing up in Alaska, Nome, Alaska. They had numerous disappearances. The FBI was up there. It's really a very fascinating film. They even have film footage of the psychologist doing putting her patients under hypnotism.
Yeah, I was sent there. I was not to Nome, but I was sent to Alaska.
Mhm.
I wondered what happened. And I asked one of my handlers, I said, what happened to me there? Because as soon as I was sent to Kodiak, it's you can't get off of it,
Mhm.
unless you have a private plane or a boat, you can't get off the island. So you're like stuck on the island unless they vote you off.
Mhm.
And so they said that they had some kind of a virus there. I needed to get inoculated against this thing, right? So I went in and I passed out for half an hour.
Mhm.
I don't know what happened to me. And even the person who owned the place that we were performing at said, what happened to you? I said, I don't know. And so I asked one of my handlers, who was a commander at the DAV in Illinois, named George. And he said, look up the word pluripotente, which I found odd because George had shown me that when he was a child, his IQ was 60.
Mhm.
Right. And I'm like, how are you zipping up your pants and talking to me? Because when I was in third grade, I was reading on 11th grade collegiate level. You're
Mhm.
telling me that you had an IQ of 60 and you know this word. And I know a lot of words. I don't know every word, but I know a lot of words, but I've never heard of that word before, pluripotente. So I looked it up and they're taking your blood and your stem cells and they can create clones and chimeras from your DNA. So
Oh.
what happened when I passed out? I don't know. I can't say, but it was in a remote island.
Mhm.
Um, in Alaska. So they're doing tests on military bases with millions and millions and millions of people, and not just military bases, in schools, in hospitals,
Mhm.
in mental institutions. MK often was a program which was utilizing the prisons to do MK Ultra experiments. And it's not just, mind control experiments and psyops. It's also they're doing DNA experiments. They're taking your DNA and they can use your DNA and they can make babies and clones. They've been cloning horses for 30 years. So why would the human populace say, "Oh, no, they can't clone a human"? Because they can and they have been in covert facilities, but you're just not a prize because you're not a member. You're not even a member of the need to know basis club. You're
Mhm.
just a member of you're our slave, and you're the person that we're going to experiment on. So you don't have any rights as to what we're doing with your DNA. We're just going to drug you, make money off of you, pretend that we're healing you, and
Mhm.
then eventually you'll either die from, opioid addiction, in
Mhm.
which we were not going to give you opioids anymore, and then you're going to go out and get heroin, and then we're going to take your children from you, and we're going to take your children and put your children in a program, and then we're going to do it all over again with your children.
Mhm.
So when they grow up, they become drug addicts, and uh and then we have a crime wave, and because we have to employ the sheriffs and the police for the crime waves, it's just on infinitum. Who is making money off of all of these things? All those that are in the club. And as they rise higher in the club, chiefs of police, or heads of the Texas Rangers, they are more satanic, and they've acceded at some form. They passed all the hoops and the hoopla to get to the next MK Ultra level,
Mhm.
New World Order level.
Well, I know the state of Texas, it has been said that they are using experimental drugs on children in foster care.
Yes, they are.
And, of course, you always have friends that say, this is the end of the world. This is going to happen soon.
It's
And
not going to be, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. It's just going to be different because there are more and more people that are awake that are fighting this now. And could it possibly be that the direct energy weapons that they used against us and the frequencies that they've used against us from television, from music, is it possible that now those frequencies are actually working against them because people are waking up now? It's not working anymore. So more and more people, they call it the Great Awakening, but more and more people are awakening to their connection to God, to their connection for the truth and justice and righteousness, and they're seeking that. If you want to seek the converse of that, then pray to the satanic factions, because they will reward you. But Satan will make a contract with you, the Satans, which would be the deep state government. They'll make a contract with you, but you have to obey that contract. They don't.
and how if someone wants to get involved in that, you know, I'm sure there are people that want to get involved in that.
That want to, yeah, they pray to the dark side. They their life goal is a satanic goal, which is the not clarity and not truth. It is obfuscation of the truth. So they work in conjunction with the dark forces, which that their premise is chaos, murder, mayhem. So you have all of your gang factions that are working towards that. All the cartels are part of the New World Order. They work in conjunction with the presidents. Escobar was working with Bush,
Mhm.
until he wasn't.
Well, it seems as we were talking earlier, the judiciary has gone awry, and they are just taking away children from the fit parent and giving them to the abuser.
Is it possible that that pedophilic abuser is part of their network or part of their agenda? Even if he's not like part of their network, he's part of their agenda.
Mhm.
So let's just say that that individual isn't, he's poor, he's not getting any money. And you start out poor. Disney started out very poor, but he
Mhm.
acceded to the New World Order, and then they rewarded him. And, I believe Disney had advanced technology. That's also believed that Hitler was speaking with extra terra factions, which would be extra to Earth, not and not indigenous to this earth, that have advanced technology. I was told about flat TVs in the 80s.
Hmm.
How did my handlers know about flat TVs? How did Star Trek know about, they had the little communicators, and they'd have a picture of the person that they're talking to. Now we have a phone and you have a picture of the person that you're talking to. And now through the wonder of media, you and I are talking on a Zoom call. They're now holding court on Zoom
Hmm.
calls. So you don't have to leave your home, and they can basically say, all right, the FBI is coming to get you now because we've determined in the Zoom call that you're guilty. And so you'll be getting a knock on the door in 10 seconds. It's like pre-crime.
Hmm. Well, also within the legal system or in even the family law system, you are guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
A- And it's like, how did this all happen with this family law legal system?
It just got, I think, instead of saying it got convoluted, I think it was always convoluted, because when we go back to Caesar and the
Hmm.
Ides of March, in which all the senators, killed Caesar, I'm not sure who they were giving their allegiance to, but this has been, you either, that's why, okay, King Henry the Eighth was not a good king, but
Hmm.
he wanted a divorce, and the Vatican was running all the churches. So he said, hey, screw this. I want a divorce from my brother's wife, who they made him marry after his brother died. And he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. Wasn't allowed. So the divorce was not allowed. So he separated from the Vatican and the Church of Rome, and he started the Church of England, the Church of the Psychotic, as one Eddie Lazard said, the Church of the Psychotic Bastards,
Hmm.
because it's another. He was very psychotic. He killed all of his wives, and I
Hmm.
wonder also if Anne Boleyn, if she had a bunch of boys that
Hmm.
died. And I wonder if they just sacrificed those boys.
Hmm.
King Henry needed an heir, which is why he married her. She was, young and stock, but he also had an heir with her sister.
Hmm.
But that heir was illegitimate, which is why she said, no, I'm not going to have sex with you until you marry me. I'm going to be queen. I'm not going to end up like my sister, who's, living with this little boy that's yours, that has no rights to the throne of England. And then that boy died.
Hmm.
He was ill.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just all very just overwhelming for people that don't understand this or have looked in looked into it.
Yeah, you'd have to study the auspices of the judicial system. Why are they wearing black robes? It went
Hmm.
back to a time when they were wearing white robes, but they were like collecting ashes or something. It was a story I read. And so they started wearing black robes so that they didn't have soot. The soot didn't show up all that well. But the black robes is a satanic thing.
Hmm.
That wear black robes, and they get around a fireplace and they do their satanic spells. And so that's what you're, when you are in front of a judge who's wearing a black robe, what is the premise of that? Where did that come from? Instead of just accepting, because we accept everything as a society, we are all MK Ultra. The nature of the MK Ultra is just to be compliant and say, oh, okay, that's the way it is, and not to question anything. As soon as you start questioning, then you're going to start unrevealing a lot of secrets. And when you start revealing those secrets and then start talking about it, then somebody else is going to think about that, and they're going to do research, and then they're going to talk to somebody else. And before you know it, you have a whole country of awake people saying, hey, wait a minute here. This
Hmm.
is not what we were told that the judicial system was. This is not what we were told governmental government was.
Hmm. Well, over in Great Britain, their judges wear red robes.
Ew, that's like even worse.
Yeah, I think it's the high court judges. I don't know about the if they have like a lower court. I haven't studied their judicial hierarchy, but the high court ones wear the red robes.
Yeesh. And what's with the wigs? That was the wigs and the Tories, right? But
Yeah.
they still wear wigs, um, which is odd.
Hmm.
What is that about?
Um,
You're
I
putting
guess
on
it's
another persona, which that would be MK Ultra now, wouldn't it? You're putting on the persona, hey, I'm shedding my persona as a normal person, and now
mhm.
I'm coming in, here come the judge, and I'm going to put on this wig, and then I'm going to create this other persona of an individual who's just, they've already, there was a movie, I think it was called like Star Chamber,
Mm.
and it was about how the decisions are already made before you step one foot in the court. They've already decided what your fate is going to be. So it doesn't
Mhm.
matter, how much money you're going to spend on litigation or for attorneys. They're bought and paid for by the cabal. And they will kick you right out of your position if you stand up against them. And that's one of the things that they tell you when you do join the good old boys club of Illuminati and the Freemasons and New World Order, is that you basically take an allegiance, which is a mob allegiance of omerta, and so the Jesuits, a very hardcore oath in which if you disavow them or you reveal any of their secrets, that they will disembowel you, that they will eat your heart, that they'll kill your children, and it's a pretty harsh punishment.
Yeah. Well, these wigs that they wear, these British lawyers follow the tradition of wearing head wigs, which is regarded as a symbol of power and respect for the law. In fact, not wearing a wig is perceived as an insult to the courts. British lawyers and judges wear wigs to portray their formality in the courtroom and to pay homage to legal history. And believe it or not, these wigs, a lot of them are made from horsehair.
Huh. Because they have horse sense and they're going to give you horse shit in their court.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Very interesting. And those wigs can range from $600 to upwards.
Oh my God. That's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Is that just for all the bald headed guys who said, hey, I'd like to have some hair in court?
Right. Like all these wigs kind of started. I was just looking at this that, when people they were born because, say their mother had syphilis. So they had high foreheads, right? So they were wearing these wigs. I was reading that. It's interesting.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell people. Look, research.
Mhm.
Don't just accept, oh, this court is here for our benefit and the sheriffs are our friends, because we're finding out,
Mm-mm.
the Mar-a-Lago raid, and regardless of whether you're for Trump or against Trump, he had said that they're not coming for me, they're coming for you, but apparently they're coming for all of us because they
Mhm.
raided Mar-a-Lago, and under the premise that he had top secret documents which were declassified when he took them. This is unprecedented in the history of our presidency. This has never happened where you have a national archivist raiding the president, taking his passports because they think he's going to be leaving the country, and then, oh no, we don't have your passports. Oh, sorry, yeah, we actually we do, we're sorry, you can come pick them up on Monday. And it's just a whole media flurry in which, again, I stress I've now become apolitical, and I have some affinations and ties through family,
Mhm.
political ties. But I took a step back and I said, you know what? I'm done with the anger thing. I've now become an unbiased, uh, apolitical investigative journalist because I need to step back and I just need to look at what's going on, not in support, not against the individuals, but I just need to look at what is actually what is being perpetrated against them, not just the American people, but the entire world. We have a government with a President Biden, whose uh, son is doing crack
Mhm.
and sniffing it off the rear ends of prostitutes, and making deals with the Burisma and with the DOJ to create biolabs in the Ukraine. And then we have a Ukrainian president who was an actor, part of the military industrial entertainment complex. He was a comedian. He had a company called CABAL, I think it was like 95 or 96, in which he was a comedian. And then in that, he had a show called Servant of the State. And in Servant of the State, this is propagandist, he gets elected the president of Ukraine. And guess what? This is not coincidence. This was strategized. And he becomes the president of the Ukraine because he's involved with the military industrial entertainment complex. And he also did homage to Beyonce. He did one of her songs dressed in black leather. He's and high heels, which he's saying he's giving a homage to the Black Sun, which is a Nazi organization. So, these endeavors, what you're seeing right in front of you, playing out in front of you, they're much more meaningful than, the audience is sitting there laughing while he's playing a piano with his dipstick.
Mhm.
What Hava Nagila, that's an insult to the people of Israel. He's playing Hava Nagila on a piano with his penis.
Mhm.
And the audience thinks it's just hysterical. I don't find any of this funny in remote. Maybe Ukrainian people have a different, comedy than we do, but I don't think so. I think that's propagandist, like the laugh track that, when you're sitting in an audience, laugh now. Here's the laugh sign. Laugh,
Mhm.
please. That's MKUltra.
Mhm. Oh, that's so fascinating. I would like to have you back on the show again.
These are the things that I talk about. So, I talk about everything deep
Mhm.
state. And, from being involved from my own research, which I can't prove my life. So the CIA makes sure that at a crime scene there are no the only DNA that's there is yours. So they leave no
Mhm.
footprints, but they leave yours, which they planted. If you watch the movie Red, you'll see the guy in the beginning. He's talking to his wife on the phone. Okay, you want me to bring half and half milk? And there's a guy standing on a chair who's got his hands behind his back, and this guy's planting the DNA and planting pictures. And all right, I'll be home in like half an hour, honey. And then he goes and he kicks the guy off the chair and takes the velcroed cuffs off so that they don't leave any marks, and you have your red tie suicide.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just, it's just everything is just so bizarre. You know, just recently, national news with the CPS caseworker encouraging a 14-year-old
To
to
be a
prostitute.
prostitute, what
Mhm.
the H? I
Yeah.
mean, we're seeing more and more of this. Open your eyes, people. Please open your eyes. Start researching everything that you can. It's like, what can we do? Start researching. If you have any of these egregious crimes perpetrated against you, I suggest if you have the capability of posting on Facebook, you can post on a blog. Blogspot is free. So is Wix. Google how to open one and then just start writing. Start writing about the things that have happened to you. If you have any questions about MK Ultra or targeted individuals, I take calls from people all over the world, and you're welcome to text my phone. I won't answer unless you're in my contacts. My phone number is 619-779 9771. I'm also on Dave Zublik's The Dark Outpost as executive producer and co-host Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that's on Rumble that you can find us. So Google us. You can find me on Twitter at Shepard Out, Shepard out. Because apparently I was in, now I'm out. I'm also on Instagram, Agent X11. You can find me, and also Agent X11 on Twitter. I run 4 MK Ultra groups, 2 on Facebook, MK Ultra See Me Now, Agent X11, and MK Ultra Stranger Things, Agent X11. And I found out when I was locked up in the crazy house that actually the character from Netflix Stranger Things 11 is actually me. And I've written a little bit about it, not getting money for it,
Mhm.
unable to prove it, but I know that that individual is me. And so what I do is I just put together all the thousands of threads, and you can take a look at it and say, oh, dang, okay, that is her for sure.
Mhm. That's fascinating. Um, do you have people call in and ask you for help?
Yes, I have people that call me every day. They're starting to regain memories. And
Mm,
so I have a little methodology which I use. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. I do what I do for free. And so I just say how I started regaining my memories. And if it's a method that works for you, then that's great. I also utilize movies. And when I utilize movies, because I decipher movies as well, I'm a cipherist. And when I decipher the movies, I leave the captions on. So when you're watching it, don't watch anything that's on television. Unfortunately, you're going to have to get a streaming service. And so I have, streaming service for Satanic Netflix. That's how I had to get my memories back. I said, this is awful. I have to pay to get my memories back. And Hulu or Amazon. And then when you're watching these, watch it with the captions on, start and stop, take pictures because we're like computers. So we see things in pictures and it will elicit a picture in your mind so that you can regain a memory. And then you write that down. And then also through talking to another individual that has been through this, just through talking, you're going to start saying, oh, right, I forgot about that because these are recessed memories that are in your computer mind, which when you're in a coma, you're still registering. You can still hear and smell when you're in a coma and you're registering memories. And if you are astrally traveling or you're standing outside yourself, you can actually see things. And when you come back from surgery, many people are like, hey, why were you singing that song when, you know,
mhm,
why did you drop the instrument? Did you put
mhm,
something in me when you stuff like
mhm,
that?
mhm,
So, and so I just try to verify technology is real. I have no means to no financial means whatsoever. But I try to help with emotional support.
mhm,
And then I try to encourage you to do the research, which will give you the answers. That's why I give my phone number out.
mhm,
I have an MA in education and the minor was in psychology, but I actually should have a PhD in psychology because my first
mhm,
husband, Steve, was a psychologist and his parents were MFCCs, family crisis counselors, and they were just very evil.
mm. Man, that's fascinating. You've been through a lot, and I'm so glad you came on the
Thank
show,
you.
and, I'd like to have you back on,
Excellent.
and great. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us here with Penny again in the future. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. And, I forwarded your information also to Megan's legal team. So if they, approve her doing this, then I'm sure she'd be more than happy to come on. And it's been an absolute enjoyment to be able to discuss some of the information that we all have. And I believe that we should all encourage one another. Encouragement is very important because I'm not going to live forever.
Mhm,
And, this needs to be something that
mhm,
you take incumbent upon yourself. And then when you get the truth of your life, then you disseminate this information to your children. And
mhm,
then that's how we change it through our children, because the children are our future. And if they're going to continue under this mind controlled world that we have, they need to actually have the armament of truth, the breastplate of knowledge.
mhm. I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.